Okay, we're nearing the home stretch. So I have the front of the shoe and I need to attach it to the base of the shoe. Um, because I forgot to leave a little bit of a channel along the edge of the band, I can't get this front to hold in place in tension as I did with the back piece. So I'm going to add some tabs or seam allowances to the inside of the shoe so that it will make it easier for me to attach it back to the base. Now again, had I left a little bit more of a channel, I might have been able to get away without this step. But this is something good to know that you can always add a seam allowance back. There are different tips and tricks. And maybe this is even nicer because it's thinner sheets of paper as opposed to having cut it from the cardboard. So you can see I'm using my PVA glue. It's a little more flexible. I like that more than the hot glue for this application. And I'm just cutting little strips. I'm gluing them and tacking them down, protecting my work surface with a scrap of paper. And then I didn't pay too much attention to the length of them because I knew I could just come back and trim them when I was all done. So they were kind of a nice uniform length. Okay, don't forget to clean up your brush, especially if you're using PVA. You want it to not harden with the glue on it. Okay, so the tabs have set for a little bit, and now what I'm going to do is just fold them back. And that will prep them so that they're ready to start gluing to the base of the shoe. So I'm going to use PVA glue to assemble part of this shoe together. The PVA glue will give me a little bit more working time than the hot glue. Each one has advantages and disadvantages, so it's really up to you to determine what you're more successful at controlling and which one is your preference. And sometimes I'll use both of them in the same project. But the PVA glue did allow me to do a slightly longer length of glue than I would have had I used hot glue. But that being said, PVA glue dries very fast, and so it's not something I put over the entire circumference of the shoe. I maybe did about 6 inches here. And with your PVA glue or Elmer's glue all or whatever you're using, compression is still the key. So you want to make sure that you're pressing those seams together really well, and that before you release your pressure, you've got a nice strong bond. So I'm continuing all along the interior. You can see as that curve starts to get a little more complicated that I'm putting glue on shorter lengths at a time. So that was maybe 3 inches because that's about all I felt I could manage. Here I later switched to just putting glue directly on the insole of the shoe. It's a little easier for me to get that in there, and I also figured since it's so far in the inside of the toe that if I do have a bit of a glue mess, no one's really going to see it. Okay, so I continue to work my way around. Compressing and rechecking as I go. I notice I have a gap there, so actually I come by with a little hot glue. Hold that for about 20 seconds. Do a little bit more with the PVA around the front. And again, this video is sped up, but this was a slow and steady process. And with the PVA glue, you still have to kind of push and compress it for 30 seconds. A minute is even better. If you have a lot of PVA glue, it's going to take longer to dry. If you have too little, it's not going to be quite as strong, so there's that sort of sweet spot in the middle. Once I got to the end of the shoe here, I switched to hot glue. I was able to get the glue gun in and around where I needed to. Oh, the other thing is I realized that I have some funny tension at the front of the shoe. And this is because when I put the back piece on, I didn't align it correctly. And so I just sort of made some modifications on the fly. I decided if I cut that a little bit shorter, it wouldn't pull so much tension on the front piece of the shoe. It helped a little bit. It would have been more helpful had I have paid more attention to my notches and transferring those when I was enlarging my pattern. But it's good. It's a good example of problem solving and how you can figure things out along the way. And I'll just say that, it probably took me about 3 hours to assemble this shoe once all the pieces were cut. And I probably spent 2 hours before that problem solving, just thinking through each of the steps. If I do this, how is that going to affect the next step? And how will that affect the next step? Okay, so I glued those sides along with some hot glue, just kind of inspecting, seeing where it might need a little bit more glue to kind of hold and assemble things together. And I'm just about done. This is where I'm looking for those final little touches that I can add to it to really make it have more character and bring it back to life. And I'll cover those in the final video.